You walk into a room you've never been in, and somehow you already know exactly what's about to happen, the exact words, the way someone's about to turn their head. For 4 to 6 seconds, your brain is completely convinced you've lived this exact moment before. You haven't. In 1876, a French psychic researcher gave this feeling a name because he thought it explained ghosts, past lives, glimpses into destiny. He was wrong about almost everything except the name itself. It stuck, déjà vu, already seen. And for the next 150 years, nobody could actually prove what it was. Until a lab figured out how to trigger it on command, and found something inside a brain scanner that flips the entire idea upside down. This isn't rare, and it isn't random. For over a century, nobody had a real answer for what was happening in your skull when it hit. Just competing theories, from reincarnation to malfunctioning wiring, to literal glitches in a simulation. It took a neurosurgeon, a video game engine, and a functional MRI several decades apart to actually crack it open. Here's what they found. In 1876, a French researcher named Émile Boirac was studying psychic phenomena when one of his subjects described an oddly specific feeling, encountering something brand new that felt exactly like a memory. Boirac needed a word for it, so he coined déjà vu, already seen. For the next 100 years, it stayed almost entirely in the hands of philosophers and psychics, because there was no way to study a feeling that arrives without warning and disappears in seconds. Psychologists could only ask people afterward and hope they remembered correctly. And when they did ask, the numbers were strangely consistent. Somewhere between 60 and 80% of people report experiencing déjà vu at some point in their life. It peaks hardest between the ages of 15 and 25. And then, for reasons nobody could explain yet, it gets rarer and rarer the older you get. But naming a feeling isn't the same as explaining it. For the next 100 years after Boirac, nobody could actually watch déjà vu happen inside a living brain. That changed in an operating room in Montreal, during surgery, on patients who were still wide awake. The first real clue didn't come from psychology at all. It came from a Canadian neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield in the 1950s, operating on epilepsy patients while they were fully conscious. To locate the exact tissue causing their seizures, Penfield touched a mild electrical probe to different points across the exposed brain and simply asked patients what they felt. When the probe reached the temporal lobe, deep in the brain's memory circuitry, patients suddenly described the eerie, specific sensation of reliving a moment they knew they had never actually lived. One patient said she was suddenly certain she was standing in her cousin's kitchen, a place she hadn't set foot in for years, for absolutely no reason. Penfield had essentially found the déjà vu button, and it lived in exactly the part of the brain responsible for storing and checking memories. That discovery led doctors somewhere unexpected. In a meaningful number of people with temporal lobe epilepsy, an intense prolonged déjà vu is one of the very first warning signs that a seizure is about to happen. A kind of aura, lasting far longer and hitting far harder than the 2 to 6 second version healthy people get. Studying those patients gave neuroscientists decades of precise data about exactly which brain regions were misfiring right before the sensation landed. But it also created a frustrating wall. Doctors had a detailed map of déjà vu in unhealthy brains and almost no ethical way to study it in healthy ones. You cannot walk up to a healthy volunteer and electrically shock their temporal lobe just to see what happens. For decades after that, epileptic patients were the only real window science had into déjà vu. Then, a psychologist in Colorado decided to try faking it in a completely healthy brain, using nothing but a video game engine. The first real breakthrough for healthy brains came from psychologist Cleary at Colorado State University. Her theory, déjà vu might not be mystical at all. It might be your brain recognizing a spatial layout it has seen before, even when you can't consciously recall the original scene. She tested it by building virtual environments in a video game engine, designing scenes that shared the exact same spatial arrangement as an earlier scene participants had already explored. just reskinned to look completely different. A hedge maze with the same turns as an earlier junkyard. A hospital room with the same furniture layout as an earlier bedroom. Participants who couldn't consciously remember the original layout were significantly more likely to report déjà vu the moment they entered its secret twin. And buried in her data was something stranger. Those same participants often felt like they could predict what was coming next. A hallway, a turn, a doorway, even though they couldn't say why. Déjà vu, it turned out, might come bundled with a phantom sense of premonition. Cleary's headset trick proved déjà vu could be manufactured on demand. It didn't prove what was actually happening inside the brain while it happened. For that, someone had to catch it live, inside a scanner. The next leap came from a lab at the University of St. Andrews, led by psychologist Akira O'Connor. His team borrowed a trick from false memory research. Show people a long list of closely related words: bed, pillow, blanket, snore, dream, but never the one word that ties them all together: sleep. Ask afterward if sleep was on the list, and most people are utterly convinced it was. It's a reliable way to manufacture a false memory on command in a lab. O'Connor's team realized they could use the exact same setup to manufacture something adjacent to déjà vu, and then slide participants straight into an MRI machine while it happened. What they found overturned the leading assumption. When déjà vu hit, the brain's memory centers, the hippocampus, the regions that actually store and retrieve memories, stayed quiet. The activity spiked somewhere else entirely: the frontal lobes, the brain's decision-making, and conflict resolution regions. The exact same regions that light up when your brain catches itself making a mistake. That single detail flips the popular idea of déjà vu completely upside down. For decades, the working assumption, the one that shows up in every movie about simulations and glitches in the Matrix, was that déjà vu is a memory malfunction, a false signal, proof that something in your head misfired and told you a lie. O'Connor's data says the opposite. If déjà vu were your memory system malfunctioning, the memory centers of your brain would be the ones lighting up. They weren't. The regions that lit up were the ones responsible for checking your memory for consistency. Essentially, running a background fact check on what your brain is telling you is real. Which means that eerie, unsettling feeling isn't your memory lying to you. It's the opposite. It's the sound of your brain catching a false memory in the act, flagging the conflict, and stopping you from fully believing something that isn't true. Déjà vu isn't a glitch. It's a receipt from your brain's error checking system, proving the checking system works. That reframe also explains a pattern researchers noticed a century earlier without understanding it. Déjà vu peaks in your late teens and 20s, then quietly fades with age. That's exactly the window when your brain's memory checking machinery is at its sharpest and busiest, still building and pruning enormous amounts of new memory. As that system naturally slows down later in life, so does the frequency of déjà vu. Not necessarily because your memory gets worse, but because the fact checker has less new material to cross-reference and catch conflicts in. There's a darker mirror to all of this worth knowing too. In some patients with dementia or specific temporal lobe conditions, that fleeting few-second feeling stops being fleeting. It becomes constant, a condition doctors call déjà vécu, already lived, where a person can become convinced for hours or days at a time that every new moment is something they've already experienced, sometimes leading them to avoid the news or refuse to watch a film, insisting they've already seen it. In those cases, the fact checker isn't catching an error anymore. It's stuck, permanently convinced there's a match. Which means the 2 to 6 second version almost all of us feel and instantly forget isn't a flaw in the system. It's the system working exactly as intended, catching the error, filing the report, and letting go. So the next time déjà vu hits you, mid-conversation, mid-hallway, mid-nothing, you're not glimpsing another timeline. You're watching your own brain do its job in real time. If you want more of what your brain quietly does every day without asking your permission, subscribe. That's basically the whole channel. And I want to know, Has déjà vu ever hit you somewhere so oddly specific it actually creeped you out? Tell me exactly where you were, down in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want to know what happens when this same system breaks in the other direction, when something completely familiar suddenly feels like you're seeing it for the very first time, that's a different glitch entirely, and it's exactly what the next video is about.